You could grab a hot meal from a vending machine, then walk a block and hear Miles Davis spilling out of a record shop window. That New York, gritty, alive, unforgettable, is mostly gone now. The automat is a memory. The L has vanished, and places once pulsing with music and protests have turned to silence or luxury lofts. It slipped away street by street, but it still lingers in stories, photos, and fading echoes. So come with me, and let's take one more walk through a city that never really slept, but somehow slipped away, and maybe, just maybe, still lives in the corners of memory. You didn't just arrive in New York, you entered it like a cathedral. The original Pennsylvania station, opened in 1910, was a marvel of glass and granite, with vaulted ceilings and towering columns that flooded the space with natural light. It welcomed travelers with a sense of awe, dignity, and permanence. But in 1963, it was demolished to make way for Madison Square Garden and a buried, lifeless transit hub. The public outcry sparked the city's preservation movement, yet something deeper was lost. And it wasn't just a building. It was a moment in civic pride, swept away by steel and profit. A place that once made arrivals feel noble, vanished almost overnight. And for many, that was the day New York stopped looking up. Drop a nickel. Open a little glass door. Inside, hot pie, cream spinach, or a roast beef sandwich, steaming and ready. No cashier, no lines. Just the quiet clatter of trays and coins. The automat was fast food before fast food had a name, and horn and hard art locations were part of daily life across New York. Students, workers, and travelers all stopped in, drawn by the charm and efficiency of it all. It was democratic, clean, and oddly futuristic. But as tastes shifted and chains took over, the automat faded. By the 1980s, it was nearly extinct. Today, it survives in memory, and maybe a few nickels still jingling in an old coat pocket, reminding us of a simpler, more mechanical kind of magic. For a few bold summers, the Bronx had its own Disneyland. Freedomland, USA opened in 1960 with grand dreams, stagecoach rides, gold panning, and American history reenacted in a park shaped like the United States. It was noisy, patriotic, a little chaotic, and kids loved every second. But behind the scenes, it struggled. Poor planning, rising costs, and the looming World's Fair doomed it. By 1964, it was gone. Today, Co-op City stands where cannon blasts once echoed and boats once glided. No rides, no parades. But for those who visited even once, Freedomland was more than a park. It was a dream that burned bright, then vanished far too soon. It didn't just teach history, it became a footnote itself. You'd hear it before you saw it, a rattling roar above the avenue, windows shaking as the L thundered past. The 3rd Avenue elevated train was the lifeline of Manhattan's East Side, carrying workers and wanderers high above the streets. Its iron bones groaned with the rhythm of daily life. It cast shadows on lunch counters and corner shops, shaking the air with every pass. But by the early 60s, it was dismantled, piece by piece, in the name of progress. The noise faded, the views opened, but the street lost its soundtrack. What once framed the city now only lives in memories and old photographs. The L didn't just move people, it gave New York its voice. And when it fell, something vital went missing. You didn't just go out, you entered a living hallucination. The Electric Circus on St. Mark's Place wasn't a club, it was a spectacle. Strobe lights, swirling projections, dancers in body paint, and music that seemed to come from another planet. From 1967 to 1971, it drew misfits, artists, and the Velvet Underground into a pulsing, untamed space where nothing was too strange. There were no rules, just sound and color and bodies in motion. But like all wild things, it burned fast. The scene faded and the building grew quiet. The storefront is still there, altered beyond recognition. Yet some nights, if you walk past with the air thick and still, You might swear you hear it humming, waiting for someone to turn the volume back up. For nearly 4 months, New York lost its voice. In late 1962, a newspaper strike silenced every major press: the Times, the Post, the Daily News. Newsstands shuttered. Paperboys had nothing to toss. Commutes felt hollow without headlines in hand. Rumors replaced reporting. People leaned in, listened harder. Conversations grew longer. The city adapted, but it wasn't the same. When the strike finally ended in early 1963, the news came back. But something had changed. Readers had moved on. Habits shifted. The rhythm of the city had stumbled. And in a town that once read the world in ink, the silence left a mark. It was a reminder. Even in the loudest city, silence can shake everything. Up in the Catskills, summer used to sound like laughter, clinking silverware, and comedians working packed rooms. The Borscht Belt was New York's great escape. Resorts like Grossinger's and the Concord bursting with life. It was camp for grown-ups, talent shows, late-night dancing, endless buffets. Families came back year after year. It wasn't just vacation, it was tradition, identity, rhythm. But air travel got cheaper and tastes changed. By the 80s, the crowds were gone and the ballrooms fell silent. Today, you'll find crumbling pools and broken neon signs, ghosts of joy. And if you ever stayed there, you know, it wasn't just a getaway. It was a world that raised generations. Before the rooftop bars and designer stores, the meatpacking district lived up to its name. The air reeked of salt and blood before sunrise. Trucks lined the streets. Workers hauled carcasses through narrow alleys slick with grease. Over 200 meat businesses kept the blocks alive, loud, rough, and real. It wasn't pretty, but it pulsed with work and urgency. By the 90s, the hooks and crates gave way to glass storefronts and curated cocktails. The grit was wiped clean. But look closely, and you'll still see old loading docks and rusted iron rails. The bones are there, just buried beneath the gloss. And if you remember the old smell, you'll never mistake the new. It was messy, loud, and glittering with strangeness. Andy Warhol's original factory on East 47th Street wasn't just a studio, it was a magnet. Outsiders, actors, and artists wandered through silver-covered walls, filming, sketching, experimenting. Ideas collided faster than sleep. It felt like the center of something electric, dangerous, alive. But by the late 60s, the lease ended. The factory moved. The moment passed. Warhol carried on, but the original spark couldn't be replicated. Now it's legend. No sign marks where it stood. Just towers of glass and the hum of a city that moved on. But for those who felt it once, no place ever buzzed quite like that room. It was just a dive bar, cramped, smoky, and overlooked. But one hot night in June 1969, the Stonewall Inn became something else. A police raid sparked defiance. That defiance became a movement. The riots lasted 6 days and history cracked open. But the original bar didn't survive. It closed, reopened, changed names, faded. What stands now is a tribute, cleaner, brighter, historic. But the grit is gone, the rawness too. The real Stonewall wasn't curated. It was imperfect, bold, alive. And if you ever stepped through that doorway back then, you didn't just witness change, you felt it in your chest. It wasn't polished history, it was history being written in sweat and defiance. Before the world knew his name, Bob Dylan played his first New York sets at Gertie's Folk City. It wasn't glamorous, just a small stage off West 4th Street, lit by candlelight and filled with the scent of beer and sweat. But in the early 60s, it was the heart of Greenwich Village. Joan Baez, Simon and Garfunkel, Richie Havens, many got their start here. It felt like something was always being born in that room. Every night was a little messy, a little magical. But scenes like that don't last. Today the space is gone. But close your eyes and maybe you'll still hear a guitar warming up, chasing truth in a single chord. You didn't find slugs by accident. It was passed between musicians like a secret. Tucked into a raw East Village block, it was the grittiest jazz club in town. Folding chairs, dim lights, and a stage where chaos lived. Sun Ra, Ornette Coleman, and others bent sound until it nearly broke. It felt dangerous, unstable, thrilling, and for a moment it was pure. But in 1972, violence ended it all. Slugs was gone, no plaque, no tribute, just silence. Still, for those who stood in that room, hearts pounding in time with the drums, it was more than music. It was electricity in the dark, a place where sound became rebellion. There was a time when Times Square wasn't just flashing lights, it was sound. From the 50s through the 80s, record stores lined the blocks, pouring Motown, jazz, and rock into the streets. You didn't just shop. You hunted, flipping through bins, chasing rare cuts, swapping tips with the clerks who knew every beat. The smell of vinyl and dust hung in the air. Teenagers discovered themselves there. Musicians learned from the stacks. But CDs came, rents rose, and one by one, the stores vanished. Now it's all LED and corporate sheen. Louder maybe, but not better. And if you ever dropped a needle in one of those shops, you remember, and you always will. New York has changed, but memories don't fade so easily. Maybe you rode the L, ate at the automat, or heard jazz spilling out of a dark East Village club. If you remember the city in the 1960s or heard stories from those who did, we'd love to hear them. Share your memories in the comments below. And if this walk down memory lane meant something to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because remembering together is what keeps it alive and keeps the city we loved from disappearing entirely.